Okay. Hello. I wanted to try to give a little tutorial of sorts explaining my thoughts behind drawing. And I thought that a good way to start would be to just do a basic 3/4 female. That's the first form that I really learned to draw, and so I thought it would be the easiest to explain. So the first thing that I do is I start getting some basic circles down for the skull. Now this is just the top of the skull. Unless you're doing like a really cartoony thing where the character is just, a round head, I like to have a few more shapes to that. I have everything connected to shapes. So for example, this is the round back of the skull, and then I go down for the cheekbone. I could have started back here, but I wanted to start over here because that lets me get the contour in. It'll look better once I have a better line. And then you connect that to the skull via the jawbone. Jawbone is very important. You cannot forget the jawbone. When you're drawing the jawbone, try to think of it as wrong button. It's a centered line down from here that hits the chin. It's a line down to the center of the chin. That will help you balance things, because you have to remember, or what I always try to remember when I'm drawing, is that these are three-dimensional shapes. You can't just draw this for whatever angle you're at, because that won't work. The jaw is a three-dimensional shape that, depending on what your angle you're in, changes how it looks to you. One thing that my art professors were really adamant about is don't draw what you know, draw what you see. And if you see the little curve instead of a thick jawbone, or if you see what looks like a flat line going straight down instead of the cheekbone sticking out, then you draw that. It doesn't matter if you know that the cheekbone's not flat, you draw that. The jawbone is really important because it connects up to the edge of the face and the hairline for the rest of the skull. So the hairline connects directly to where the jawbone connects to the base of the skull. And then the ears are the transition between the hairline and the jawbone. That means that once you have this up, you can decide whether it's going to be a flat hairline or a widow's peak or receding or what have you. I might have my character have a widow's peak just because I feel like it. Next, since you have the center line that goes down to the chin, make sure you have the line that goes from the ear around. Don't just draw straight lines, it goes around because it's a 3D object, and you can't just use the bottom of the circle because that's where the top of the neck connects. The eyes are not going to be at neck level. Something that I found on a tutorial that has been really helpful for me is connecting the edge of where you want the eyes to be in an almond shape across the center line. So like this is the outer edge of where I want my eyes, and then we do this, and that works no matter where the face is facing. So like if they're facing forward, this is just quick, then you can have dot, dot, almond, and it gives your eyes a basis, like a guideline, an extra guideline to draw with. Your eyes don't always have to follow the line. it just gives you a guide even if you want to have like more curvy or round or square eyes. Didn't do the widow's peak very centered. Next, the eyebrows. The brows, something that I always try to remind myself, they're not just random lines going above the eyes. They're connected to the brow bone. And the bone is what presses down on the eye to make expressions. So you have to remember that the bone is there. You can't just leave the bone out. Otherwise it's going to look like they're painted on. And remember, when you're drawing the eyes, they're not just going to be this shape no matter which way you're facing. You can see this shape has a rounder curve outside than this one, because this one's a little bit closer to facing forward and this one is closer to facing to the side. And eyeballs, like all 3D objects, have their own shape. Eyeballs are round, which means that the closer you are to facing profile view, the more you'll see them round out of their eyelids. It sticks out, so you have to remember that. Next, the nose. The nose, the trick I always use is that it curves from the eyebrow. So no matter what shape eyebrow you have, your nose, no matter what shape nose you have, usually connects in an invisible line. You might not completely finish drawing the line once you add the heavy lines in, but it's a good trick. Next, the mouth. The mouth is usually closer to the nose than it is to the chin, but drawing it higher or lower gives the face a different impression, so you can do it either way. Next, the hair. So if I have my character have a widow's peak, I'd like the widow's peak to be showing. So I might do something where it goes around the widow's peak. Remember the hairline, keep the hairline in mind when you draw hair. That way it still sticks out from underneath if you do bangs. And then this I might just leave like that. And then the back of the hair, I do loose lines instead of trying to get specific even shapes, because loose lines gives you a better, smoother guideline for when you do the heavy lines and get those even shapes. Next, the rest of the body, because you have the head down. Remember what I said about the neck connects to the base of the skull. The neck is a 3D object, so you have to remember where the rest of it is. It's up here. The neck comes down in a shape where the collarbone resides, so you have to remember where the shoulders are in order to do that. Characters are supposed to have shoulders, they don't just have nothing there. And the neck comes down. Remember, it helps to have a center line sometimes. And thus these are the collarbones. The spine is the very most important thing for the torso. The spine always curves around the center of the back. It's never straight. It might sometimes be bent over, or it might sometimes be bent more if they're facing upwards. It's never straight. So just remember that. And it's the center of the back. So the rest of the back is fleshed out around it. The chest, no matter if it's a girl or a guy, the abs or the breast is going to connect to the armpit, just like the jaw connects to the ear. So if you have the shoulders down, this is the kind of seam where the sleeve usually has the seam on the shoulder. And that goes down to the armpit right here. The abs or breast would connect like the jawbone up there. And again, remember, it's a 3D object. So you're not just going to be drawing circles or squares. have their own shape connecting like around the collarbone. The spine carries it, and it will look better once I give her the outlines of clothes, but right now we're just trying to get the body proportions down. The stomach does not just jut straight in. You have to remember that there are ribs there. The ribs will make this kind of curve there. And then the spine. So you have the waist here, just below the ribs where the stomach starts. The next part is the hips. The hip is just a small belt shape, transitions from the stomach to where the butt's going to be. And then you have the butt. Generally, if you're doing a more realistic picture, it's only going to be about the width of the shoulders at most. But if you're doing a more cartoonish picture, like you might have a character with a much bigger one, or you might have a character with nothing. It just depends on what style you're doing. Right now I'm doing a slightly more realistic one, and I might do a tutorial for a more cartoonish one later, or for different body shapes, because there's a lot of those. Now it's going to be, think of this as Barbie joints. If you've ever taken apart a Barbie out of curiosity, I think all little girls have, the leg connects up in kind of this shape, which is why you have the round shape like this, because you want that Barbie joint to be able to connect in there properly. And then the other leg is going to be doing the same thing, but I'm going to have her legs spread apart, so hers will be at a slightly wider angle. And then you have a straight line here. There's a lot of people who like to do really curvy lines to connect the legs, or Y lines, as one of my teachers taught me. I found the best looking one for my style is just to draw a straight one, no matter the gender. Just makes it easier. So the legs, it's always better to draw legs too long than it is to draw them too short. If they look too short, then you can tell you made a mistake. If they look too long, you can say it's a stylistic choice. If it makes it easier, draw that center line. Legs and arms come in 2 pieces each. So where this round oval stops, the next one starts. It usually has kind of, let me fix that center line. Don't like this one. It usually has this shape. Don't just draw them overlapping. You have transition shapes. This is the back of the knee. And then you can like add the knee in once you draw the pants or whatever. But the back of the knee is going to curve around. Don't forget the muscles in the legs. The legs have muscles. And it tapers off to where the ankle is. I might have to move this picture up so I can draw the feet. Don't forget to taper to the ankles, because otherwise you're going to have kinkles. Unless you're trying to get kinkles, which is different. Now before I do the feet, I'm going to do the arms, because the arms have a similar concept to how you do the curves of the legs. You start off with the Barbie joint. And then you have the outward shape transition, and then you have the tapered oval. And never bring the arm down to the knee, not unless they're like a gorilla or something. Arms stop above the knee. I might have drawn her shoulders a little bit too tense and pulled in, but it'll work for now. Sometimes shapes will be behind other shapes. You can still draw sketch lines of those to keep the shape in mind. Some people like to draw hands as squares. I like to draw them as trapezoids because it keeps in mind where the thumb is going to be. And then for now, it'll be easier to just draw a Powerpuff Girls style guideline for where the fingers will be. And then like that hand, even if you can't see it behind the leg. Now, let me move everything upwards so I can draw shape up. Okay. GIMP really likes to not cooperate a lot of times, but it's free, and it does most of what Photoshop does. So at the base of the legs, you're going to have the ankles. Ankles are important. Don't forget where the ankles are. They're going to be on either side of the center line. Next you have the heel. The heel extends around the ankle. Next you have the arch of the foot. It's kind of a cone shape. Keep that center line in mind. Cone shape. Next you have the toes, which is usually kind of a small box shape with the big toe extending out further than the little one. And here's the box shape. You have the body sketch. Now, very quickly, I will do the clothes sketch. This will be a very rough sketch. Not going to be very many details, but it will serve its purpose. Now clothes, unless it's a cat suit, it's generally not going to be super skin tight. So you want to remember the wrinkles around. So for example, I'm going to give her some bunchy sleeves. I like the shapes of the bunches. Bunches, like everything else, have a 3D shape. So you have to remember what that 3D shape is. Next, deciding what kind of collar or top to give her. I might do a vest kind of thing. So let's first do the vest part. Extend in triangles down, because that's fancy. And then it'll go up across the collarbone. And then let's have a tall collar going up from that. And buttons, don't forget the buttons. So then that would stick off just a little bit and come down around. Usually if you have a tank top kind of sleeve, it extends well below the armpit. If it helps, imagine moving around in it, and if it feels like you're going to start to get chafing from how close it is to the armpit, you've made the sleeve too small. So the collar connects to the puffy sleeve shirt, and then the vest is on top of that. Next, I want to give her a skirt, but not. I'll do a pencil skirt, and it's going to have pinstripes down it to look businessy. And it'll stick off just a little bit because that's how skirts work. And remember where the center line is, because that's going to be the lowest point of the skirt. These are just kind of guidelines to remind me that I'm doing pinstripes so I don't just color it in flat later. Maybe I'll give her some garter gloves or more garter bracelets with lace, just because that looks nice. Then the shoes, I did a foot shape that's more in line with a flat shoe than a heel. If I were to do a heel, then I would have to make the arch extend further down because it would be bending down. But I didn't do that. So she's going to have flats. Let's give them a little Mary Jane buckle and say they extend there. And that goes up around the heel. And we'll do another little buckle here. So then that would look like that down here. Around the heel, another little buckle up here. And she'll have some stockings. If I just do tall ones, then it's going to look less nice than if I just give her full stockings. So I'll leave it like that. And that is the very basic rough sketch of the body shape. So I will probably do another video later with the lining and coloring. Thanks for watching.